Services Marketing, MKT625, Lecture number 14.
Assalamu alaikum Khawateen Hazrat. This is Wasim Ahsan, your instructor for the course Services Marketing, MKT625 at the Virtual University of Pakistan. I welcome you to lecture number 14. We are in the process of learning the two most critical elements of services marketing, that is satisfaction and quality. I talked in great detail about satisfaction in the previous lecture, and what we have learned so far is that in order to keep customers loyal to the company, we have to keep them satisfied. And we have gone through different elements which customers look into in order to evaluate their own level of satisfaction or dissatisfaction. After having gone through those elements, we now can confidently conclude that any company has to look into three different categories of customers. One of those who are extremely satisfied and loyal to the company, and we have to see to it that they come back to the company to buy our services over and over again. The second category is the dissatisfied category, and we've got to see to it that we carry out certain modifications of behavior or bring about changes in our systems and procedures to make sure that there are no lapses of variability, and therefore the customers who come to us are satisfied customers. They do not get dissatisfied. And the third category of customers is the one who are kind of indifferent. It is extremely important to keep these customers loyal to the company because they are the customers who are satisfied, but then at the same time, they do not feel a very high level of motivation to come back to the company to buy your service. So therefore, special effort has to be given toward keeping these customers highly motivated so that they can come back. We also have seen that satisfaction basically is a measure of quality. In other words, if the quality of service is good, customers are satisfied. If the quality of service is not good, obviously customers are not satisfied. Just like customers like to look into so many different elements before they think they are satisfied, they do also look into the various elements of quality in order to make sure that the service they have bought is of quality, or the service they're considering to buy is going to be of quality. Now, what are those elements that they really look at can be categorized as the interaction quality, meaning that when customers are interacting with the providers, they like to look at the quality of that interaction. And it is where the importance of role-playing comes in. The second element which customers like to look at is the physical evidence. They give a lot of importance to how the company looks like because it is the tangible signals which in the first place, when the customer is going to have an encounter with the providers, give him either confidence or the lack of it. The third element which customers like to look at is the actual outcome of the service. Now, this, of course, is the most important element which customers like to look at because this is, in actuality, the service delivered. What is important to keep in mind is that all these elements, they do not play a role which is of the same level and of the same degree. Meaning there could be services, depending upon their characteristics, which are rich on physical evidence and the interaction, for example. And similarly, there could be services which are more demanding on the interaction quality and the outcome of the service. I can explain this with the help of an example. Just look at a lawsuit. There's a customer who is dealing with his attorneys, and it all depends to what extent the attorneys are considerate and responsive to the needs of the customer. So the interaction quality in this kind of a situation is going to be of very high significance because it is going to depend upon things like punctuality of the attorney, the one who is following your case, in terms of keeping his appointments with you. It also is going to depend a lot on the way he responds to your calls when he was not in his office. And it also depends to a great extent on the outcome of the service, meaning what has been the verdict given in relation to the lawsuit. So the quality of interaction in this particular situation, along with the actual outcome of the service, are two elements which really are predominant in this kind of a scenario. However, if you go to a restaurant, the elements which you will be evaluating in order to make sure that you are at a quality place are going to be all three elements, meaning you're going to be very much concerned about the actual outcome, which is the food itself. And you will be concerned about the quality of service, which is going to be a function of the quality of interaction, how the staff behave there and how they serve you. And you're also going to be quite very concerned about the physical evidence, meaning the surroundings. You really like to be in surroundings which are decent and where you really can develop a sense of belongingness, a place which you think is compatible with your status. Now, experts could have realized that these three elements on which customers evaluate quality work in a very macro kind of a fashion, and therefore there have to be different dimensions to all these elements. And therefore they have made an attempt to divide these elements into further dimensions, for the simple reason that depending upon the character of different services, the people like to evaluate those services from so many different angles and on so many different dimensions. I would like to take you back to the example of food. When you are in a restaurant, you do not just look at the overall quality of the food, but you also look into so many different micro kind of elements. For example, whether or not the food carries the right most temperature, and whether or not the aroma is just about the right one. And similarly, there are other services which could be evaluated on so many different dimensions. Take the example of car maintenance. The very element of serviceability entails with itself so many different elements, meaning further sub-elements. You look into things like the availability of spare parts in the garage, where you happen to be for the repair of your motor car. You look into the knowledge level of the workers, whether they are efficient or not. And you also look at the level of their motivation, whether they are willing to provide the kind of service which is the quality service and which you really look for. So keeping into consideration so many different angles and dimensions involved in the evaluation of quality of so many products across so many different industries, experts have come up with a criteria which is applicable to so many different products. And that criteria has been developed by marketing experts after considering so many different products within so many different industries. The criteria which has kind of a universal applicability while customers evaluate quality consists of factors like reliability, responsiveness, assurance, empathy, and tangibles. Now, these 5 elements are the ones which are very important from the point of view of evaluating any product from any different angle. The fact is, again, customers do not employ all these elements at just about the same time while they are evaluating one particular product. Empathy, which I will be explaining a little later, may not be a very pressing consideration when you are in a bank just to drop your credit card monthly bill in a drop box. All you are concerned about the ease and the facility with which you proceed toward the bank, whether the drop box facility is at the entrance of the bank or it is located somewhere at the end of the branch, which you may not like. If it is at the entrance, it is very easy. You do not even have to step inside of the bank, just drop it there and come back. So the factor of empathy may not carry the very heavy consideration when you are dealing with this kind of a product. So all I'm saying is that it could be a combination of different dimensions when you evaluate different products. Now let us talk about the universality of these 5 different elements which I counted for you, and let us start with reliability. Reliability basically is a measure of how accurately and dependably a service is delivered to customers. This takes us back to the concept of consistency. The service providers have got to be very consistent in delivering their service, meaning they must understand their roles and they must understand the procedures which have been laid down as the standardized procedures so that there are no mistakes and the element of variability can be kept at a distance. If variability creeps in, we have to have certain ways and mechanisms and rather strategic moves to take care of that. And I'll be talking about that in a few moments. The important point here is that customers look into to what extent the promise which the company made has been fulfilled, whether their need stands fulfilled or not. If the need stands fulfilled, they look upon the product as a quality product. And if the encounter also has been very positive, they look upon the product as a quality product. The fact of the matter is that reliability is such an important measure of quality that many companies like to position themselves around the core of reliability. The meaning they make their taglines which really hinge on the reliability factor. They talk about things like settlement of claims within 24 hours or delivery of packages within 48 hours. So these are the kind of taglines which give us insight into the core of reliability as the positioning the factor for the company. And again, the fact of the matter is that the customers do expect every company to be reliable, whether the company likes to position itself around that core or not. And therefore, reliability is the topmost element which customers like to evaluate when it comes to quality. The second element of quality is that of responsiveness. And responsiveness is the ability of the service providers to be very prompt and attentive to the service delivery. And it is this attention which really makes customers feel very important. And the fact is that the standards of attentiveness and promptness when it comes to dealing with the customers is something which has to be established from the customer's standpoint, meaning the company should never be the one to decide how much it is going to take while this particular dimension of the service is delivered. If the customer has certain questions or concerns, the customer must get a feeling that those questions are being answered and those concerns are being addressed. So the standards have to be established from the customer's standpoint, and the customer really feels kind of let down if these the standards are not really maintained from the angle that he thinks about these features of the service. To maintain standards, companies have to have staff members who are properly trained to be responsive to customers' needs. Just take the example of a company which is operating in the area of internet and is managing servers for so many different businesses at remote locations, meaning in different cities and different countries. Your staff members have got to be technically very competent so that they can be responsive to all the problems which their customers may face from time to time regarding their data management needs. They've got to be alert, they've got to be prompt and very attentive to the needs, the fulfillment dimension of the customers. Even if it takes a lot of time in order to fix one problem, the first thing is to be responsive, and the second thing is to give as much time as it takes to satisfy the customer. And the fact is, if staff members are responsive, they also end up having the reputation of being very reliable. And a reliable company is the one that people like to deal with. The responsiveness feature also gets hurt if people are made to wait for a long time. And the mechanically designed telephone response systems are one example which people at times do not really like because there is no human interaction and people are made to wait for a long time. The point here is that attentiveness and promptness are features which are the denominators of responsiveness, and companies have got to be extremely sensitive to this particular feature. The third element of quality which customers like to evaluate is known as assurance. Assurance is the ability of a company to instill trust and confidence into its customers. How does the company do this? Well, again, this happens if the company really has a culture of being responsive and of being reliable, meaning the company has staff members who are fully trained and they have complete control of what they are doing. You can see how these elements are interconnected, and one thing leads to another. If a company is reliable, the chances are the company will also be responsive. And if the company is reliable and responsive, the chances are it also can assure its customers about the quality of service which it is providing. This factor takes on added importance when providers are selling services which are very rich on credence, meaning which are very hard to evaluate. And customers always look up to someone who can instill confidence into them about the quality of that service. And the fact is that nobody better than the providers themselves can perform this responsibility. So the providers are the ones who perform this function and act as a bridge between the company and the customers. By building this bridge, they can instill confidence into their customers who, with trust that the physical evidence and the quality of interaction are impressive, will go ahead to buy that service in the hope that they will be satisfied. The concept of personal banker or key account managers really fits in here. You might have noticed these people are the ones who are responsible to satisfy your customized needs, and they are the ones who assure you of the right level of service which you require delivered. And the examples of financial securities advisors, insurance agents, and IT specialists fit in here. Let us take the example of IT. You happen to be a company that is buying some IT services from an IT vendor. What generally happens is that this company that sells IT solutions is going to assign your particular deal to one manager who is going to look into your customized needs. And when that happens, what it automatically leads toward assuring you that you are in safe hand. Because if the person is competent, which the chances are he is or she is, then it amounts to assuring the customer that the services rendered are going to be of quality and the customers eventually are going to be satisfied. Providers, as a matter of fact, have a tremendous opportunity to shape encounters to the favor of the company and to the benefit of the customer. Providers can play their role very effectively, and providers also can have their customers play their roles while they contribute towards getting the best possible service. So the interaction quality really elevates, and in the process, what happens is in assuring the atmosphere which really satisfies the customers. Now, this is a situation in which the macro elements of the physical evidence and the quality of interaction they really count a lot, because you're going to base your evaluation on these two particular factors. The third one is the outcome of the service, and you have not yet seen the outcome. You will see the outcome only after you have started using that particular service, meaning the IT solutions that you are going to buy. And it might take you a few months before you really can determine that the services bought were of very high quality. So what is important while you buy the service is an assuring attitude on part of the service provider that you are going to be well served and you're going to be eventually satisfied. Trustworthy organizations develop loyal customer bases, and those are the ones which are retained over a longer period of time, and those are the ones which any company should look for. The fourth feature is known as the empathy, or the fourth element of the quality evaluation dimensions is empathy. Empathy is all about caring and individualized kind of a service to customers. What happens is when individualized and customized kind of service is provided to customers, they feel very important. And the very essence of this factor is to make your customers feel very important. And there's a general consensus among experts that small and smaller companies are better at being very empathetic toward the customers, because of their smaller size. They are in a better position to start knowing their customers on a personalized kind of a basis. If you know your customers on a personal basis, the chances are the service rendered is going to be of good quality, and you can really have a very analytical insight into the needs of your customers. You can really empathize with the customers. You can put yourself into his shoes. And that is what empathy is all about. It is because of that particular reasons that many a time small and smaller firms stand better chances when they pit themselves against the bigger competitors to win over so many different contracts, only because they happen to know their prospects and the customers much better than bigger companies. So it is the culture of the company, regardless of the size of the company, which really matters when it comes to developing the skills of empathizing with your customers. But as a rule of thumb, it is said that smaller companies are placed better toward being more empathetic than their bigger counterparts. So empathy is an other important element which customers really look at. Now, a customer will not think in terms of your size if you happen to be a provider. Customer will not care whether you are a bigger company or a smaller company. Customer would like to feel very important. And it is upon the service provider or meaning the employees of the company to what extent they really can be empathetic toward their customers. And this is not to say that providers within bigger setups are not empathetic at all. I'm only saying that smaller companies are better at doing this because of their sheer smaller size. The last element of quality evaluation is that of tangibles. And after having talked so much about tangibles, I think that we all know and stand educated that tangible evidence has got to be very convincing. It has to be very much in line with the positioning of the product, meaning the service product, and it must send tangible signals which can really elevate the comfort level of the customer who can feel very confident of buying that particular service. Now, just look at all the features. If the company is reliable and the company is responsive and the service providers also can assure their customers about the quality of the service, and the tangible evidence also is very convincing, it is going to have a compound impact on the customer about the satisfaction level. The fact is that all these factors complement each other, and the company has got to be good at all these. After talking about the factors of quality evaluation, we can very confidently conclude that encounters play a very important role toward all this, because it is all during encounters that all these things take place. The meaning, if a company is reliable, it is going to be assessed by the customer while the customer is having an encounter with the provider. If the company is responsive, the company is responsive in response to a certain situation which really has cropped up at the point of action, meaning that the encounter is taking place. If the company is assuring, it again is because of the encounter which has taken place, and the provider has the opportunity of assuring its customers. So encounters have got to be understood in their true perspective. Although we have learned what encounters are, but I think that we've got to talk a little more about encounters which by marketing experts have been termed as the moment of truth. It is such a strong statement because this is where customers really build up their quality perceptions or modify their quality perceptions, and this is where customers either satisfy them or dissatisfy them. But what is important about encounters is that encounters have got to be very positive. And not only that, each and every encounter has got to be very positive. And that takes us back to the episodic experience, meaning the global experience of any customer has got to be very positive in its accumulated form. If a customer has been to a facility, say 10 times, all 10 times the customer should have had a positive experience. If the customer has had one negative experience, it is the responsibility of the company to correct that. And there are strategies to correct that, which I shall be talking about during this lecture and also later throughout the course. So encounters are something which never will leave us as long as we are trying to learn the concepts of the services marketing. And we also have to keep in mind that encounters are of three different forms. We have so far educated ourselves about face-to-face encounters, in relation to the 5 elements of quality which customers like to evaluate when they are establishing the quality level of the service they are buying. The other 2 types of encounters are remote encounters and encounters by telephone. The remote encounters are the ones which take place by way of the internet. We interact with companies via websites. As a matter of fact, when we are placing an order through a website, we are interacting with the company, and that is an encounter. Although it is very mechanical, it is electronic, and there is no human interaction, but the fact is that the encounter is there. The positive side of the encounter is that customers do not really face problems while they go through the website or so many different options of the menu which has been created basically to facilitate customer to place the order. So encounters can be of this type, and it is not just the websites and internet, it can be also by way of CDs and DVDs. So electronics are playing a great role toward encounters which have taken on a new dimension in the context of the buying and selling. The third type, which I just indicated, is the telephone encounters. Again, extremely important encounters because they are the ones where the outcome of the service and the interaction of encounter is extremely important. And this is a type of encounter where physical evidence does not really matter that much because the customer is concerned more about the information which he wants to collect or place the order or lodge a complaint. The fact is that service providers have got to be very alert, prompt, and courteous when they are having a telephone encounter with their customers, because providers are the ones who really can modify the encounter. They can make it pleasant, and they also can make it unpleasant. And the objective is to make it pleasant so that the customers can really look upon the encounter as healthy and satisfying. The third type is the one which we already have talked about, and that is face-to-face encounters. So the importance of encounters can be hardly overemphasized because quality perceptions, as we have seen, are built during encounters. This is a statement to be underlined, and it is because of this factor that encounters take on an added importance. The marketing researchers have been very much concerned about the causes of satisfaction and dissatisfaction. And as a matter of fact, they've been trying to identify what really are the reasons which lead to either satisfaction or dissatisfaction. And they have developed a technique which is known as critical incident technique, CIT, to analyze the incident that led to either satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Meaning, what really is it which made the customer satisfied? Or what really is it that made the customer dissatisfied? And the technique basically works by having your customer tell you complete stories that led toward that satisfaction or dissatisfaction. And the story is recorded word by word. Again, the fact is that marketing researchers can have collected thousands and thousands of stories and then analyze them in order to come up with some common themes against which we can really establish what really leads to either satisfaction or dissatisfaction. And the reason I'm going to talk about the satisfaction in relation to these 4 established themes is that satisfaction basically is a measure of quality. So satisfaction and quality go hand in hand. The 4 themes are known as recovery, adaptability, spontaneity, and coping. Let me talk about these one by one in detail. Recovery is all about the company's ability to compensate for a failure of the delivery system. Meaning, if something goes wrong while you deliver the service, there's got to be something, meaning there's got to be a strategic move which really can recover the damage done to the company. And this basically, therefore, is a response from the employee of the company to a complaint lodged by the customer. And it becomes the basis of customer evaluation of quality. I can give you an example of a hotel which offered free food to its customer for 2 nights only because the customer could not get the room of his choice. The customer opted for a room on the park side, whereas the room that was given to the customer was on the roadside, and therefore that really put the customer into a frustrated mindset, and the complaint lodged by the customer led the management of the hotel to recover that situation by compensating the customer with offering free food for 2 nights. So this is one example of recovery. Another example could be that of a courier company which offers free delivery to you if you happen to be a customer for your next consignment because the previous one was messed up in terms of the delivery time. Now, you in this particular situation are going to be a satisfied customer and going to overlook the mistake made by the provider because you will think to yourself, this is just one of those situations in which anybody could make a mistake. But since the company has realized its own fault and is willing to compensate for the mistake it made, you will look upon that company as a reliable company, and that will not add to the negative side of the episodic experiences. It will rather add to the positive side of the episodic experiences, giving you a global positive experience with that particular company. However, if the courier service gets into an argument by saying, no, something went wrong because of too much traffic on the road and we could not deliver the package on time, or they come up with some other lame excuses, you as a customer are going to be dissatisfied and will think of switching vendors. You will go to somebody else, and that is something which must not happen to any company, because staying ahead of competition and keeping your customers intact so that they do not go to the competitors is one of the prime objectives of any company. The second theme against which the level of satisfaction is evaluated, and therefore the quality aspects assured by the company, is through adaptability. Adaptability is a response of the provider to customers' special needs and requests. Actually, it is a test to what extent the delivery system of the company can be flexible, because the providers are dealing with demanding customers, or with customers who happen to be in demanding circumstances. Therefore, the provider's flexibility plays a great role under this kind of a situation. And do not lose sight of one fact, that this is not just theory which I'm talking about. This is something which market researchers are going to have unearthed by looking into so many different stories as narrated by customers. When customers talk about these stories, they say, I happen to be at such and such place, and this is what happened there during the encounter. I said this, and the provider did that. So based on actual episodes, these stories have been analyzed and then related to the common themes which I'm talking about. So let us talk about adaptability with the help of one example. A service firm which specializes in repair of air conditioning system might like to send its repair staff to a destination, and customers who are not expecting that service at a late hour because of the peak season. The customers have very realistic level of expectations, and because of the peak season, the customers think that the repair staff may not come tonight, whereas the company adapts itself to the demanding situation and sends its staff for the repair work. So this is one example of exceeding the level of expectation of the customer, delighting the customer by being adaptable and flexible. There could be so many different examples, and I will leave it to your imagination to come up with a few more in your own minds. But the important fact here is that the balance between the system, meaning the standardized procedures, and the empowerment of the provider who has to make the decision of being adaptable and flexible is a challenge for the company. It is here that many motivated providers become kind of frustrated and demotivated because they do not have enough powers to make decisions which can flex the system to the benefit of the customer. Actually, we can draw a relationship between adaptability, and demand equilibrium. You will recall I having talked about adjusting demand between different periods, meaning the peak period and the lean period. Now, if this repair company found itself within the peak period, it tried to capitalize on the demand which was there to fulfill. Whereas from the customer's perspective, the customer's expectations were exceeded, and the company ended up having one more satisfied customer. So this is how these themes which have been developed out of real life stories could help us get to the bottom of those the causes which lead to either satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Let us now talk about the third theme, which is about spontaneity. Spontaneity or spontaneousness is in relation to unwarranted and unsolicited response by providers to customers. In simple words, what it means is that everything is working fine, meaning the delivery system for the service is perfect. There is no need on part of the providers to be adaptable because no such demand has been made by the customers. It is only that the provider would like to walk an extra mile in order to facilitate his customers. The provider would like his customers to have a feeling of pleasure and elation, and he would like his customers to exceed the predicted level of expectation. Under such circumstances, what happens is positive spontaneity does wonders. However, if spontaneity is negative, which it can be, then it really destroys the image of the company because the company ends up having dissatisfied and disgruntled customers. Let me give you one example of positive spontaneousness. The reception staff of a hotel might like somebody important from the hotel walk with you to the room when you are checking in. Now, that is going to give you a sense of importance. This is not something which you expected. This is not something which you demanded. It is only an extra courtesy on part of the management to make you feel important and pleased. So this is one example of the spontaneity, meaning positive spontaneity. However, if in a hotel staff is rude to you while you are requesting him to get you a cab only because you want to go to the city center for shopping, that is going to be a negative spontaneity. I mean, there is just no need on part of the provider who happens to be one of the staff members to be rude to you or to be kind of evasive, even if he's not rude, he's not fully attending to your demand, then it is going to add to your negative experience. I mean, if you are there, for the second time or the third time, if you happen to be there for the first time, it is going to be the very first negative experience at that hotel, which is going to keep you from coming there again the next time. So the spontaneity is something which is unwarranted, it is unsolicited, and the tricky and the interesting part of spontaneity is that it must be made to work to create positive and pleasant impressions. The fourth one is coping. Now, coping is the ability of employees to cope with problem customers. Now, this is kind of a theme which has been developed by experts after looking into different stories more analytically than others, because customers do not really want to talk about their own side of problems, meaning they're being problematic. These the situations are the ones which crop up because the customers are problem customers, and the encounter becomes negative only because of a negative contribution on part of the customers and not the providers. So the smartness of the staff members of a provider company is to deal with such customers very cleverly. The first response, as experts suggest, is no response, because if you do not respond to the negative the behavior exhibited by your customer, you may think that the customer is going to feel kind of ashamed of that behavior and may correct himself. However, if the customer keeps on creating problem and the customer creates problems not only for the provider but also for other customers, because at the place of action it's not only just the provider and one customer, it is other customers also, and then the provider has to take the corrective action. Let me give you the one example of a passenger who created a lot of problem for the ground staff of an airline only because the flight was delayed by several hours due to bad weather. Now, this is something, which could have been attributed to circumstances, to an act of God. The customer was really limited in terms of his thinking and did not want to attribute the cause to the actual factors which were responsible for that failure. And therefore, the providers had to intervene to the convenience of other customers because this customer was creating inconvenience for others. And the corrective action can be taken in so many different ways. There are textbook examples where an airline pilot really had to snub the passenger into his seat because the passenger was misbehaving. And the trick here is not to do something which might offend other customers. The important factor here is to take an action which is toward the satisfaction of other customers, because you want to keep all those customers who are being put to inconvenience by just one who is spoiling the whole apple cart. So just try to be smart at the coping the factor when you're dealing with the problem customers. It is generally said that customer is the king, but then you see that there are situations where you are constrained to think on those particular lines, and you might think otherwise. There are other themes that relate self-service technologies, and self-service technologies are the ones which I talked in relation to remote encounters and telephone encounters. The themes that I have just talked about are the ones which basically relate to the face-to-face encounters, and therefore the stories and the examples which have been cited all are based on actual episodes. We also have to talk about the SSTs, as they call, meaning the self-service technologies, intern meaning internet, the websites, CDs, DVDs, and telephones, and so on and so forth, and then see what really could be the themes that lead customers towards satisfaction and dissatisfaction. Well, there are a couple of the generalized kind of themes which are in favor of these the self-service technologies, and also go to the disfavor of these technologies. Let us first talk about those which make the experience very pleasant and positive. Well, customers they do feel very much comfortable and satisfied when they are dealing with ATMs, for example, or any other support which is available to the customers at a time when an alternative service is not available. Coming back to the example of ATM, you know that you want to draw cash at an odd hour when banks are closed. So you start looking upon these self-service technologies as something, as a boon, because the alternative to that is not available, and therefore it has solved your problem at that particular point in time. These technologies they become negative when you start having a kind of negative experience, and if you get negative experience over and over again, then definitely you as a customer start thinking about these technologies as not being very supportive. Now, one example could be calling a bank and finding the system down, somebody telling you that the system is down and therefore your request cannot be entertained. You want to lodge a complaint, or you are wanting to talk about an emergency, and because of the system being down, there is no way that your problem can be entertained, and therefore that takes you into a bad mood, and you start thinking about the non-responsive side of the technology, which otherwise should be very supportive. So the only factor which can be rubbed in favor of these self-service technologies is that with the advancement of the information technology, the systems are going to be so much advanced with the passing days and months and years that most of the problems that we run into today may get eradicated with the passage of time. So we have to wait and see as and when technologies improve and take care of the problems like downing of system and so on and so forth. Another element that goes to the disfavor of these technologies is that there is no human interaction. Now, if you are looking at technology from the favorable standpoint and you think that it is a very good alternative to something which otherwise couldn't have been available to you, you definitely think in terms of this as a great support and do not really care about human interaction because you want results and you're concerned about the outcome. You're not really concerned about the human interaction. The reason I'm talking about human interaction is that human interaction provides you as providers with a tremendous opportunity of modifying your interactions and your behavior. Customers also have a way of rating systems as strong or poor based on design parameters. If they're dealing with a website which is complex or a menu which has too many options and that keeps you guessing what should come next, then you're going to certainly look upon that system as complex system and not customer friendly. So these are the few elements which either satisfy a customer or dissatisfy a customer in terms of the self-service technologies. But again, the important point is that we have to deal with these technologies because they do offer alternatives which are very unique in nature. And the example of the automatic teller machines is a classical example from that point of view. The objective should always remain retention of customers because retention leads towards loyalty and loyalty breeds more customers. Satisfaction and quality are two concerns which must be felt by each and every provider. And understanding of satisfaction and quality from that point of view forms the basis of the whole strategic area in relation to services marketing. The providers must understand what are the elements of quality which customers like to evaluate before establishing quality, and what are the four themes within which those elements could be looked at even more incisively and with a sense of bringing about a desired change. If the providers are sensitive to these two models, then the chances are their formulations are going to be in the right direction. Now, having understood these four themes, I think it is very important that we also talk about the strategies which we should formulate in response to these themes. These strategies are the areas which I'm going to talk about throughout the course, but in brevity, I will be talking about the relevant strategies in the next lecture. Thank you very much for your attendance, and I look forward to you in the next lecture.